Today, I will discuss with two of Indemo's partners, Federico Gaito and Ilya Huggins, on non-performing loans, life cycle, and management. Let's tune in. We'll also answer some community questions. Nice. So now we move on to the next topic, which is the NPL servicing life cycle and the operational management. The first question being, could you walk us through the typical servicing life cycle for NPLs and from onboarding until the recovery?
Here, maybe I will give the floor to Federico as a servicing company, one of the best one in Spain, who are currently servicing Tamarindo. So, Federico, please.
Yes, I would start a bit before the onboarding. I think that everything starts in due diligence and actually even starts at the portfolio sourcing. So getting an opportunity, then analyzing the opportunity, doing due diligence, and due diligence is very important to be expert in the real estate, because in the end we're valuing collateral in order to understand the collaterals. And when we look at portfolios that are nationwide, assets that are located everywhere in Spain, you really need to understand very well the dynamics of the place where the asset is located, the price evolution, the demand, the offer, and you need to be able to go and do local diligence in all these areas, okay? And have data, a lot of data, information, in order to see where you can really potentially estimate what price you can transact, as well as visit the asset and understand whether the asset is in good status, needs capex, no capex, etc. So this is one part, the diligence, together with the technical part of analyzing the legal file, okay? Where the loan is, where the judicial process is, if the judicial process is well placed by other lawyers, etc. So you can estimate now the value of the real estate and the timing that in case that you need to go all together to the judicial process, which part of the time is and how long it might take you to repossess the property. Once this is done, and actually with the let's say with the seller, then you have the onboarding of the asset, and this is a very administrative, intense, you need systems, softwares, and people that are good at onboarding assets, registering assets at the name, and then going to courts and surrogating the judicial processes. And then in terms of once you onboard the cases, basically you need to start being very disciplined in the legal process, following the cases, as well in parallel always starting to talk to the debtors and get out of court.
So what are the KPIs then, the key metrics that you look at when trying to assess the servicing performance or the progress?
Yes, here basically we have the timings, legal timings. Okay, so we follow very closely what the legal case is and what, based on the data that we have, okay, what is the timing expected for the next judicial step. Okay, so we know that potentially in court A based in this location is very different than court C in this other location. So we have data that help us, let's say, project and estimate based on the depth of type and the location of the asset and the court, how much time should we expect to the next step, and then we follow and be very disciplined in the chasing of let's say these steps. And then, so this is like one important KPI is timing. Always be very focused with the time. Then the second one will be the contact with the debtor, how Do we have contact with the debtor? Yes, no. What is the contact? Are they willing to reach an agreement? Not. The reasons, and when is the supposed next contact with the debtor? Okay. And third is the real estate. Another KPI will be always trying to, from time to time, understand the value of the real estate, reprice, and also visit the property and see if the property is in good conditions or not.
Anything to add from your side, Ilya?
No, everything was explained perfectly.
Okay, wonderful. So now we move on to the next topic, the third topic, which is the legal strategies and the enforcement process. First question is, how do you prioritize cases between legal and out-of-court strategies? Are there specific criteria which you apply?
Well, maybe I will start and then Federica add something. The thing is that there are two parallel processes. So legal should be fulfilled by a legal team, and out of court settlement should be fulfilled by out of court professionals. So, and it's better for them to be independent because, you should, let's say, the work should be done by the professionals, which refers to a specific business line. So there is no prioritization. And it's a good thing not to have a very specific prioritization. Obviously, we know which, depending on the cost to value and expenses to the market value or to debt, we see where we should move faster. And if we see, for example, that the legal proceeding, not because of the legal team is working bad, but due to different circumstances, I don't know, the court sometimes is a bit slower, or there's some kind of a strike, we see that we should react fastly, and that we should maybe push a bit more to the out of court settlement. Yes, then this is, let's say, business decision, how to move the focus from legal to out of court proceeding or vice versa. But if you, to answer on your specific question, if there is a prioritization at the beginning, I would say no, both options are prioritized. So it's very important to fulfill the legal steps and to fulfill them accurate, as Federica mentioned. But it's also important try to find the debtor, trying to find the lawyer, try to find the solution, because we're also intending not to push the debtor. We're actually here to help the debtor to solve his problem, because sometimes he owns way more to the creditor than the solution that we're trying to offer him.
Yeah. Anything to add, Federico?
No, just reinforce what Ida was saying, that it's a parallel process, and you all 100% of the cases you need to have a legal claim in place, because this is basically the way you enforce your right, okay, as creditor. And you know that in the end, sooner or later, depends the court and the situation of this particular claim, you will enforce your right, and you will end up getting your repossession of the property. Now, this is 100%. But and then in parallel, you always try to find the solution, as Silvia was saying, because in cases that you can anticipate and find a good solution both for creditor and debtor, you are always open to do this. Okay, but you don't have the guarantee that this will happen. We'll try, but in some cases it will happen, and some other ones simply the debtor is not there, or it's not possible to do an out-of-court.
The next question, the same topic, legal strategies and enforcement process. Roughly how long does a foreclosure process take today in Spain, assuming the debtor doesn't oppose? And does this vary by region?
Let's say there is always theory and there is always the practice, and sometimes it does not match. Even so, there is very specific amount of days which after which, for example, courts should reply, or courts should react, or any specific steps should be done. And this is the practice. This is the theory, which sometimes does not always, I have mentioned, match with practice. So the theory that does not match with practice. The thing is that, yes, on average, the foreclosure happens in 2.5, 3 years. It's a common practice. Sometimes it can be a bit faster, sometimes a bit lower. It always depends on the court, on the judge, how many cases are now in the process in each specific court. Sometimes it also depends how big is the court, because there are regional small courts where there's just one secretary, one judge, and that's all. And sometimes the amount, even though the amount of cases is not huge, they're a bit overloaded. So to answer directly on your question, yes, at average it's 2 to 3 years. It can be faster. I have seen a lot of cases that long less than a year. Like after 6, 8 months, there was a decision. There was already an auction, a decision of to start the auction. In 1 month, there was an auction, and let's say we could start the next step, which is not, which does not refers to the legal proceeding of the non-performing loan. It's a proceeding of the possession of the real estate, becoming the owner. It's a bit different stuff. But until that time, the finish of the auction, I have seen 9 to 12 months, which is not common practice. As well as for 5 years is also not a common practice. If we're talking average, it's 2, 3 years.
Anything to add?
Yeah, I would say average in our experience could be anything between 2.5 and 3.5 years. And then this is what should happen, but then you have a lot of situations where you have appealings or positions from debtors that basically extends a bit the processes, as well as the courts that are collapsed or they are inefficient, and also they don't react or respond in the legal timings that's supposed to be. So you can have extensions to these averages, and that's why it's also very important to have always an out of court capability, so that you are able to talk to your debtors anywhere in the country they are located. You have someone there close to them that can go talk and try to find other solutions and try to bring them to the table and understand that is potentially at some point to be.
Well, now let's go into the community questions. The community questions which we asked in our Telegram. We asked our Telegram members, make sure to join, to ask us questions so that we could ask you guys, Ilya, Federico. And the first community question is, what are black swan risks related to NPLs? Black swan is a very unexpected, like a catastrophic situation. So what are black swan risks related to NPLs? For context, they added, is it difficult to find detailed information on NPLs? At first glance, they seem like very safe investments considering their return on invested capital. And the main risk, time, appears to be manageable through diversification. So again, the question, what are black swan risks related to NPL?
Maybe I will start and Federico will continue, but the main black swan is lack of accuracy. I would tell like this. Most of the mistakes that might decrease the return of the investment in the future, beside of the like thunderstorm, or we're not talking about nature. Yes, nature can implement a lot of things. In the thunderstorm, it can be earthquake, I don't know, it can be volcano or whatever. These things that are not predictable. I don't know if we could consider them as a black swan. If we're talking about things that might appear, this is sometimes like accuracy and responsibility sometimes as well. But most of these mistakes can be, let's say, prevented on the stage of due diligence. That's why sometimes due diligence take more time, because yes, me as a part of the investor, I'm interested in investing my money maybe sometimes a bit faster, because time also costs for those money that are not invested. But there is always on the other side guys like you're saying, listen, it's better to take a bit more time on checking the deed, checking the debtor, checking the real estate, to be sure that we won't get this black swan in the future. So if there are any specific black swan that we have in practice. Black swan is that's why it's black swan. You understand it only in the future when it appears. As far as we're working and we have our experience, we're learning on the mistakes on the others. To be smart, we try to pretend everything. Try to pretend as much as we can, not everything, but as much as we can before. And yeah, we would not have to invent the bicycle here. Time is always the risk. The prolongation of the timing might appear by all the reasons that we discussed before, not to repeat them. And yes, diversification is always the answer in all kind of investments. And as much specific instruments or shares, bonds, when we're talking about the markets, different NPL, different collaterals you invest in, that means that you were getting rid of the risk, putting everything in one NPL or in one basket. But to repeat myself, we're trying to avoid it on the stage of due diligence and checking all the risks that might appeared in the past with the competitors or the past or the partners.
Anything to add from your side, Federico?
Yeah, taking a different angle to what Ilya was talking about, more on black swan, on potential issues on the internal process of the due diligence, etc. I think that another angle could be something that you don't control, an external factor, like what happened in 2008, with the subprime crisis. I think that today, with what we're seeing in the world and everything what's going on, I think that we do have geopolitical risks that are increasing every day. Of course, all these things are things that we don't control, and from one day to another one can change the market drastically. Like war, we have a few going on now. Tariff, commercial war, what we're saying, and what we saw what happened in the market, the equity markets in March and April. So very abrupt declines there. And if you look at what happened in 2008, 2009, an external factor like the subprime crisis, that in Spain, in theory, we didn't have the problem. 3 years down the road, the problem hit the market, the real estate, the NPLs, and in this case, real estate prices went down significantly. Okay, the reality is that a product like the NPL with a collateral that is real estate could also be seen that yes, will not be, let's say, avoid any big crisis in the world, like the ones that we mentioned and the risk that we have, but it's also more safe than other investment types, like whatever you call it, crypto or equity or bonds or whatever. Because in the end here, yes, you might have a drop short-term in prices in the case that it happens, that we are not anticipating something substantial now as what we saw in 2008, but but then in the end, real estate prices tend to recover, okay, and you might have a let's say a drop in price for 1 year, 1.5 years, but then prices in real estate tend to go up, and so I tend to see that any sort of black swan coming from geopolitical is a risk, but it's also an opportunity, okay? Because this will also bring a lot of new opportunities to acquire and buy new NPL portfolios, okay? And at better prices. So I would tend to see, yes, black swans as geopolitical risk that we have on the table now. These are the main risks that I see today in the market. Something external from Spain.
And that's a wrap for this video. Tune in next time and we'll discuss out-of-court settlements. Make sure to subscribe, follow us on our socials to not miss out. See you there.